There's quite a lot of information in that question, so I'll take it on notice and we'll give you something in writing. What I can say is the lease is does specifically require the club to approach the city to seek permission to remove trees, which they are now doing. So that's definitely in the lease. The more detailed answer I will give to you in writing.
Okay, I do appreciate they're now doing that. It's what's already occurred that's of concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Leisha Jack.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff.
Just your name and subject.
Yes, sorry.
Yep,
Leisha Jack, Stirling Urban Tree Network, Karrinyup. My questions pertain to the Mount Lily Golf Course tree removal. Question one, in 2020, when the Mount Lawley Golf Club's lease was renegotiated by the city and approved, staff mentioned in the, I think it was the October 2020 agenda item, after councillors had insisted that more information was provided, that there were 550, I think 500 or 550 trees it was stated would be that the club wanted to remove. So we know that. The city knew that. 550 trees or 500 trees. Are you suggesting that, from what I just heard, I've been scribbling down notes, that this behind closed door meeting tonight is about giving delegated authority powers to staff to make decisions on tree removals behind closed doors on that public land?
I wouldn't be suggesting anything on a confidential item, Ms Jack.
Trees are on public land are of significant
Yeah, I totally understand that, but
concern. It's not an item that you have the right to put behind closed doors. Sorry, sir. Number two, the tree removal, the 550 trees, was all part of the original 2015 master plan that the club had created by a big international golf course construction and earth moving company. Now, what certainty have you been provided with, councillors? What certainty have you been provided with that the Mount Lawley Golf Club, with the City of Stirling bureaucrats, behind closed doors, won't continue with this agenda of tree removal, the 550 tree removal? What certainty do you have, do we have, that that isn't just going to go back behind closed doors and continue piecemeal as it was before?
We have complete certainty that there is no agenda to remove 550
Where was
trees.
it? Okay, so you have seen it. Okay, well, you stated it publicly anyway. Okay, thank you. Because of all the lack of transparency around this issue at Mount Lawley Golf Club, you know, you're probably aware that where there is a vacuum of information, it will be filled with conjecture, or the tree removal is actually to reduce the environmental. People are beginning to think that this, because it's so weird, the whole process around this golf course, that the true reason is that that there's plans to turn it into a housing development one day. Removing the trees will significantly reduce the environmental value of the site. Well, maybe not, but did you know that in 2007...
Your question, Ms Jack.
Yes, did you know that in 2007, in Parliament, it's on Hansard, that the then, I think, Commissioner of Planning was asking questions about that lot and others, and and asking the Minister for Planning when that land would be, I don't know what the words were, I haven't got it on me right now, but relinquished or whatever. That was also about the time, by the way, that the recently
I need a question, Ms Jack.
Okay, are you aware? And are you also aware that I haven't finished all the things that are you aware of? Okay.
It's a question, Ms Jack. So let's shortcut it and tell you that I am not aware what happened in 2007 on Hansard. What I can categorically tell you is it will not be a housing estate, and we don't deal in hypotheticals like that.
Well, there's articles in the newspaper, the
There
West
may be rumours
Australian,
around.
wanting
It is
golf
not
courses,
happening, Miss Jack.
mass tree removal.
You have it on record. It's on public record. Viewers at home, we are not turning it into a housing estate.
Okay, well,
I promise.
these secret meetings don't help with speculation. Thank you.
Thank you. Privately owned, that one.
And they're looking after it. They're not chopping down trees.
That brings us to the end of question time. Oh, sorry, is there someone else?
There's a lady who filled the form but didn't actually manage to get it back.
Apologies, if you'd like to come up. Sorry, I missed you somehow.
That's okay. Sorry, I'm new at this. So
That's right. Your name and suburb?
Ariane Bradley from Balcatta.
Thank you.
Other councils and shires around the state are uniting to have the Cat Act 2011 changed so that cats need to be kept on the owner's property 24/7. Will the City of Stirling be advocate as the Cat Act comes into for review in 2024?
Thank you. Mr Quirk?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the City of Stirling, like all local governments, will certainly be engaged and contribute to the review of the Act. As per my previous comments around our own local law, what we do need to make sure of is that any provisions in the Act and the regulations are practical and enforceable. Containing all cats to residential properties 24/7 probably isn't practical, but again, that's one of the things I've got no doubt the sector will look at as part of that Act review.
The number 2 question was other shires and councils do have incredible amount of education going out there. Maybe that can be part of it. And the sciences behind cats being kept 24/7 in their owner's property is just amazing. So I hope that you guys go along and, think about the welfare of our wildlife in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, have I missed anyone else? No, that does bring us to the conclusion of public question time. So I'll go on to item 8, application for leave of absence. Councillor Dudek and Councillor Olo have both requested a leave of absence as noted in the agenda. Are there any other requests for leave of absence tonight? Councillor Sandri?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The 10th of August through to the 10th of September. Thank you.
Thank you. No other indication. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those leave of absences. Move Councillor Kristovich, seconded Councillor Olo, and just a show of hands and we'll get that done. It's unanimous. Thank you. And confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the minutes of the special meeting of Council held 20th of February 2023 and the ordinary meeting of Council held 21st of February 2023. Move Councillor Thornton, seconded Deputy Mayor Proud, and just a show of hands, councillors. All those in favour? Thank you. And against? So Councillor Reeve voting against the minutes of those meetings. Thank you. Item 10, announcements by the presiding member. I have nil, but I will ask Councillor Ferranti to make an announcement. I believe you have one, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mayor and councillors, I'm delighted to announce that on the 3rd of March 2023, Jackson Morby was admitted as a lawyer and an officer of the Supreme Court of Western Australia. The city's Manager of Governance, Jamie Blanchard, moved the motion to admit Jackson as a lawyer. Jackson has worked at the City of Stirling for over 5 years after starting in Rec and Leisure and a brief stint in planning services. Jackson started with governance in 2019. Jackson was essential to the city's continued operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Live streaming of the council meetings and councillors attended remotely through virtual meetings are both part of Jackson's legacy. They would not have happened without him, of course. Jackson was also instrumental in drafting the laws, which we all love, making the process of the City of Stirling meeting procedures local law of 2021. Jackson's admission as a lawyer is a result of many years of hard work. He was supported during the time by his family, friends and colleagues. Congratulations, Jackson, for your wonderful achievement, and I have a limited edition poster for you to receive.
Well done, Jackson. Yes, we can now, we're going to go Mr Morby now if they're difficult questions. And councillors, you'll be delighted to know, as Mr Blanchard's pointed out, if you're unhappy with the Manager of Government's answer, you can request a second opinion now. Thanks for that, Councillor Ferrante. I'll now go to item 11, unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil, and now I'll move to item 12, which is the recommendations from committees. We'll move to the Audit Committee items to start with. No alternative recs were provided to Governance prior to midday today. No items are required to be pulled out. Are there any of those items that need to be pulled out? Councillor Thornton?
Yes, I'd like to pull out an item from the confidential agenda,
So is this the Audit Committee?
Audit Committee.
Yeah, so I just need the number, Councillor.
It's the 12.1 IA2.
12.1. Okay.
Is it?
Yep. Page 114. Okay. Are there any other items that need to be pulled out?
It's the lease terms.
12.1 IA2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the lease.
It's the last one, page 114. Page 42 of prompt. So we'll leave that one there. Is there any others? If not, what I will do is remove that. It's confidential, so that'll come out at the end of the meeting. And I'll ask Councillor Lagan to move the balance of the reports from Audit Committee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the balance of the report, excluding the items that are going to be in the confidential portion of the meeting.
That's just 12.1 IA2. So all items except 12.1 IA2. Seconded, Councillor Perkoff, and we'll just go to the vote, councillors. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. So those viewers at home and those in the gallery, we have moved those Audit Committee recommendations en bloc. There is one item that will come to the back of the meeting as a confidential item. I will now move to the Community and Resource. We have a couple of happy city officers there who may now leave. That's it. Community and Resource Committee items. Any alt recs were provided to Governance prior to midday have been included in your running sheet. Please note that 12.2 TE1 is required to be pulled out due to two councillors declaring financial interests. Councillors, are there any other items in the Community and Resource that you wish to pull out this evening? Councillor Christovich?
So 12.2 ES2.
12.2 ES2. Noted. Councillor Ree?
May I please have 12.2 CC1 on page 136 and 12.2 F1 on 221, and my apologies for being late, and just to make sure that my financial interest is recorded to 12.2 TE1. Should be.
Yes, it is on the sheet.
Also, I'd like to move whether or not the council under the Act can actually approve confidential items to no longer be confidential. And I'd like to move that way because I don't believe that some of the items that are in the white paper would need to be confidential. And it's up to the presiding member to...
Yeah, is there any particularly? You said some, so is it?
I don't know with Councillor Thornton whether some of her comments need to, definitely maybe not confidential, but on the white paper, which unfortunately has about 10 number ones, so it's hard to follow, under the financial services, the comment, I don't know how you, question 1 by me on page 1, it does talk about it on the agenda, and this is a further communication from the Director of Finance, and I don't feel that that...
Is it? So what item is it relating to, though?
That's relating to 12.2 F1.
Okay, so why don't we wait till we get to that item, and then we'll find out what you want to do there, and we'll deal with that. We'll deal with each of them as they come up. Okay. So if there's no other items that you want to pull out, let's just deal with them as they come up, if that's all right. So we'll start with the Community and Resource Committee items now. And so I do want to note, so 12.2 ES1, the upgrade of the right-of-way Chewett Hill results, because we have many members of the gallery who are here, that hasn't been pulled out, so the committee recommendation will go through council at the end of this. So it won't be discussed. Oh, well, I haven't got it. If you, yeah, so here we go. Well, we'll see if we can get the committee. Sorry, I only have a run sheet, so I don't have any agendas. That's why sometimes I look confused up here. So the committee recommendation for that particular item said the council approves an upgrade to right-of-way 22015, reclassifies the right-of-way to a category 2, includes the right-of-way in the right-of-way development contribution plan, and this be implemented through the rights-of-way strategy review. So that hasn't been altered, and it will go through more than likely at the end of this meeting. I just don't want you to hang around all night if you're expecting it to be discussed, and it won't be. Maybe one of the government staff can go out with them as they go, if they go. Yeah, it's up to you. What you? That's all right. So we'll go on to item 12.2 ES2.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me. I just have a question for the financials, a couple of, but
No questions on it. We haven't got to those items. If you'd like to pull one out, you're welcome to pull an item out.
excuse me, I think it's pointless to pull it out. It's just that I was going to ask the
You can do that
Director.
offline then, councillor.
so I would speak to, okay, I'll do
Yep.
that tomorrow. Thank you.
So let's go 12.2 ES2. Assessment of the e-scooter trials being pulled out by Councillor Christovich. Councillor Hatton, as chair of the motion. Chair of committee, or the motion.
Yeah, so, Mayor, are we to, am I accepting now the alternative recommendation? Yeah, it's not the same, it has changed, I believe. There's a change in number 2.
So if you
and
just move
5.
the committee's recommendation, unless,
I think it's changed slightly. There's in number 2, it has, through the Mayor, Mr Mayor, there's one or more scooter. I don't think that was in the original.
no, so the issue I have with this one, councillors, is you're the committee chair. You should move the committee recommendation.
Okay.
If the alternative rec had been discussed with everyone and was only slightly different, which I know it has, but if you go back to what happened at the committee, it was something very similar to that was lost. So I don't think it's right to not do it it would have to be an amendment and be done that way.
Okay, then...
So if you move the committee recommendation.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the committee recommendation. Thank you.
I'm happy for Councillor Christovich if you'd like to test your amendment with the mover and see if he'll accept it and do it that way.
Yes, so to move it, just two amendments. One is in item number 2.
Councillor, if you'd stand up, please.
Oh, sorry. So 2 amendments I'd like to propose. One that item 2 be amended to say that 1 or more e-scooter operators as opposed to 1 e-scooter operator. Can I explain why?
No,
okay,
and read 5. You're asking if he'll accept it as a...
Will you accept that as an amendment?
I will accept that, but I think there's another part, isn't there?
Yeah,
let's just deal with... Yep. So he's...
Okay.
So Councillor Hatton's prepared as a mover to accept that 1 or more by addition.
Correct.
Yep. So it becomes part of the substantive. Yeah, he is the seconder.
1 or more.
Oh, sorry.
Councillors, Councillor Hatton has moved the committee recommendation. Councillor Christovich has seconded and asked for an addition.
I don't think he seconded.
He can, though.
Where's the...
We didn't get a
He
second.
seconded, and I went to him because he seconded.
point of
Councillors,
point of
I'm quite happy that
I'm gonna-
Mr. Blanchard, and if you don't give me the answer I want, I'm going to Mr. Morby. Mr. Blanchard.
Oh,
Mr. Blanchard, are you happy with that process?
Before council can consider an item, they must have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Hatton moved the motion and Councillor Christovich is testing whether he's able to second the motion with the consent of the mover.
Jackson, you're up.
he hasn't actually seconded it.
If I could indulge for some moments.
Councillors, Councillor Christovich, can you say nice and loudly, I'm seconding with these additions?
I am seconding with some changes, yes.
Okay, we're happy now?
And part 5.
Well, it's
Okay.
going to be a long night.
All right, and part 5 is different to the previous one. What it says is that the city uses the journey data collected as part of the trial to develop a planned priority footpath upgrade program based upon the routes most frequently travelled to inform an upgrade of those footpaths alongside the existing footpath program for consideration as part of the 23-24 capital budget process.
Councillor Hatton, do you accept that?
Yes, I do accept that.
Okay, then it becomes part of the substantive. Motion's done. Is anyone
A
opposed?
point of clarification, that is completely different to the actual item that we're discussing. So I have a question as to whether that can be accepted by amendment, because it doesn't speak to the intent of the item.
It's not an amendment, councillor, so it's a substantive motion. The mover has accepted it. Let's not deal with semantics. If you don't agree with it, oppose it and we'll debate it.
To
Councillor
clarify,
Lagan.
we had this precise debate at.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd like to oppose just for discussion and some questions.
Thank you. So Councillor Lagan is opposed. Councillor Hatton, as mover of the motion, if you'd like to speak to it.
Yeah, look, this e-trial has been debated at length at committee. The two parts that have been changed, I did support that because in part two, it doesn't actually state for a single tenderer to be not considered. At committee, there was a fair bit of debate on whether we should have a second or third party tenderer involved or whether there should be a sole tenderer. We also debated that it can get pretty messy when you've got more than, if we were to have more than one provider of the service, it could get very messy with geofencing. Different providers have different ways of geofencing. Maybe with the other parameters that the scooter companies apply. Also, there's some consideration needed on, this is still pertinent to point two, needed on the economics of those who provide, because there could be a case where if you have more than one provider, then you don't have enough clientele, and then it becomes a rather weakened provider in the sense that you aren't getting good quality. So to have multiple providers could be a problem, but then again, it could be a benefit, as some councillors have debated at committee. So I feel that point two, one or more e-scooter operators, opens the door up. We are evaluating the trial. We are going to extend it to one or more providers. When you get to part five, we talked about why do other wards, I mean, there is a footpath strategy, and that footpath strategy applies across every ward, across every suburb, and it gets staged in. And those footpaths that are in urgent need due to safety will be dealt with as required within the strategy. I think the debate was leading to why should Scarborough, where the focus of the e-scooters is probably, why should that area maybe get more benefit? However, given that it was in an original motion or original part of council a year or two ago that there would be some provision within the e-scooter implementation for upgrades of footpaths, and also because of the sheer need for safety when you've got a moving vehicle on a footpath with pedestrians and other users, I feel that this warrants, part five warrants me to move it into an amended motion, and that's why I've put it up as such. So safety and also the trial needs to be extended, and we might not need multiple providers, but we have to wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kristovich.
Thank you very much. Just with regards to point two very quickly, obviously it doesn't mean that there will be more than one, but it allows that option to be on the table just in case that's what the report comes back with, and it gives us a bit of flexibility rather than locking us in. It's interesting to note that councillors are very concerned about the specificness of the motions and what they might bind us to. And just to read on from what the chair said, obviously there was a motion, and this part five has nothing to do with upgrading the footpath specifically in Scarborough. It's about looking at paths that are being activated as a result of the e-scooter trial, which may or may not need to be upgraded as a result of safety concerns. And really it's about consideration as part of budget process in the whole ambit of the footpath program. So it's not really making anything more defined. If people want to look at define, they should be more concerned about the motion that we moved in December 2021, where every single person around this table said that every single footpath should be upgraded in the trial area of the e-scooters. So we've already made that decision 12 months ago, which was quite a radical decision, and now obviously people are reflecting on that, saying we shouldn't even now consider whether a path should or shouldn't be upgraded based on whether it's dangerous or not. And now that we have data from the scooter trial. So this is to do with the scooter trial, it's to do with the safety of paths. It's got nothing to do with giving priority to any particular path, any particular ward, because obviously the scooter trial extends beyond just the coastal ward, and it's really just about working within our footpath program to try and identify areas of concern based on data that we have received over a 12-month period. And it's not locking us into anything, it's tying us in with the existing footpath program. It's just putting it down for consideration as part of the 23-24 capital budget process, which may or may not get approved, which may or may not have priority, which may or may not result in changes. So it's a very insignificant change, but it is building on the motion that was done back in December 2021, albeit that it's much more watered down, and it's not, again, reaffirming the original council decision to upgrade every single footpath, which was probably a bit extreme at that point in time. But I understand why people did it at the time, because they weren't exactly probably aware of the consequences of the decision they were making, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So look, this is a pretty radical change in the motion we were given, so I'll foreshadow the original committee recommendation. And just a couple of questions. Through you to officers, point 2 says that the city progresses with a public tender process for one or more scooter operators within the city. So through you to officers, that would mean that we would be reopening the whole tender process so that all parties could apply for a tender process for e-scooters.
So I can clarify that we haven't got a tender process yet, so we're not reopening.
So, all right, my second question on that would be then, we would then have to open a tender process because we would have other providers?
No, so we'd have to either way. So the city, the motion originally said the city will progress with a tender process.
Yep.
For a scooter operator. This is suggesting the tender process have multiple options in it.
Yep. Now, and again through you to officers, that may leave the possibility that the current provider of e-scooters may lose the tender.
The current provider doesn't have a tender.
There is no tender.
Okay, so they may not be the selected preferred tender.
That, yeah, entirely possible.
Yep. Okay. So, on that point also, why then? Why would we accept this when officers made it very clear in the original report to committee that having more than one operator was problematic?
Officers gave you pros and cons. It's up to you what you accept tonight.
Yep.
Councillor Hatton and Councillor Kristovich has suggested that public tender process can be one or more.
Yep.
So I would suggest that once that process runs, then council would still have the final decision on whether they accept one or more e-scooter operators.
Mm-hmm. Correct. On point 5...
Oh, thank you, Councillor Lagan.
On point 5...
A bit of positive reinforcement, thank you.
Absolutely. On point 5, my reading of point 5 suggests that suggests two options, that any planned priority footpath upgrades will need budget costing. Is that budget amount or parameters going to be ratepayer funded across the city or funded via income from a scooter trial or a scooter operator?
That would be up to council during that budget process. There is no current funding, or it's a hypothetical whether there will be funding provided from the operators.
It is kind of it's preempting the issue by saying that it'll be a planned priority footpath upgrade if we don't have funds to prioritise any set footpaths.
Well, again, that's up to council. There are certainly funds in the budget to do as many footpaths as council wishes to do. It's up to council how they wish to prioritise, whether it's on new footpaths upgrades or take money from other budget pools.
Yeah, and my final point on that, point 5, through you to officers. Are officers suggesting that footpaths throughout the city and all other parts of the city where ratepayers may walk on those footpaths, are they less important when it comes to safety than prioritising footpaths that might be just for scooter use?
I can probably answer that one too. I don't think that's the intent. It was similar to questions we got during public question time. I think the simple thing is all footpaths should be at a base standard where they're safe and accessible for everyone to use.
Yep.
This is suggesting that if we want e-ridables to be a part of our future and part of our strategy as it grows throughout the city, especially on those major networks,
Yep.
we would expect that the high usage areas are able to not only carry people who are walking or riding their bikes, but potentially ridables alongside them. So potentially they'd be upgraded to the newer 1.8 wide footpaths.
So I think, and look, in opposition, I'm not in opposition to scooter usage, and although I am concerned about some of the recent media that talks about the non-wearing of helmets, the speed of scooters, and the lack of ability for police to be able to police those modes of transport on open roads. Even in my area, scooters come down our street regularly at well beyond 60 kilometres an hour on the road, with individuals both night and day not wearing helmets. If we're going to run any trial or use scooters anywhere, whether we upgrade the footpaths or not, I think we need to be doing it in an environment where we're getting very high support from the police, be it Scarborough or any other area. And I just find 5 problematic...
Can I just clarify something there? Let's make sure we do separate that this item is about the scooters that you pay for that are gated in terms, or geofenced in terms of their speed. So it doesn't matter where in the city they are, they'll be restricted between 10
and that is a
to
positive.
15.
But it is, in my observation, it is true that the more we promote scooters, the more they're being used in both modes. And the open mode, where you just go and buy one from whatever store, is, I think, problematic in some areas. Look, number 5 still concerns me because of the funding and because of prioritising safety and not suggesting, but prioritising above other areas where I'm well aware in many wards there's a need for footpath upgrades, not just because they're being used by scooters and electric modes of transport, but by walkers as well.
Thank you. And Mr Murphy's just added in that he is comfortable in terms of it only being for consideration, and it's still not something that council would decide which footpaths get done. This would certainly be officers looking at their priorities as they do it. I have Councillor Migdale next.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, and just as you're about to start, if you would like to speak on this item, if you can just indicate as Councillor Migdale starts, because I might have missed you. I've only got 2 more down.
Anyone to indicate?
I can do both at once. There you go.
Whilst not on CRC, I did attend committee the other evening, and this item was certainly discussed robustly, I felt, in my opinion. I read and reread the report prior to this evening's meeting, and the idea of allowing a sole operator to move forward with the city for the next 12 months sat more comfortably with me with the deeper understanding in the report as to why that would be the case. However, I do agree with number 2 in this instance, only because we just don't know what cities either side and next to us will be doing and which operators they will employ. And we really want to make sure that any operators who can operate within the city give our tourists and give the people who are utilising these scooters a great run of the coast. They don't have to stop off and look for another vendor's scooter in order to continue up to Hillary's or beyond. So whilst I understand the need for it would be easier from the city's perspective to continue on with a sole operator, Neuron, and I'm comfortable with that. I do also feel that moving forward into the future, we need to have flexibility, because otherwise we're not going to have the best user experience. I too take issue with number 5, and I'd ask Mr Mayor that these are put separately, please, because all cities, all residents across the entire city of Stirling deserve safe footpaths, full stop. So in terms of figuring out which footpaths should be fixed in which order, I know that our officers, with their schedule of works, understand that those that have major issues take priority in terms of getting fixed. I do not see that we should change the schedule that we have in order to change footpaths based on motorised scooters in one particular area, being Scarborough. Certainly there are plenty of residents in the Lawley ward who utilise scooters, and there are plenty of footpaths that require attention. So no, sorry, I cannot accept number 5 as making sense, and therefore would ask that you put them separately. Otherwise, overall, I again support committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just do some checking here? So I'm assuming the intent isn't that I put each item separately, it's just to separate number 5 out. Each point you'd like separately. I think, so I'm trying to work out the intent of why you'd want it. If you want to have the chance to remove one or more, so I'm just, sorry council, I just don't want to do stuff for the sake of it. So if all councillors agreeing to exercise the city's option and then 2 and 3 go together, I don't see why we'd start to separate them all out individually.
Mr Mayor, if you just want to separate number 5, then that's okay with me.
Okay, because we need to do that, otherwise we can put the whole motion and then have the foreshadowed officers. Either of those will do the same thing. Councillor Lagan's already foreshadowed that, so we might even, yep, we'll see. We'll decide when we get to it. Let's go to Councillor Ferrante.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, my question is to the possibly Mr Blanchard or Mr Morby in regards to the data and privacy of information that's related to members of the public and how we're extracting that data. Unless there's T's and C's from the actual operator to say that they'll be providing the information to a third party, I question whether that's applicable in our situation on item number 5. The question for the officer, please. Yeah, okay, I'll get the Manager of Governance. We certainly don't get any personal information from the companies, but their data is publicly accessible, so I wouldn't think that's a problem. Mr Blanchard?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, my understanding is that we don't receive any personal data from the provider. We receive aggregated data. The provider themselves would collect customer data, but as a corporation would be bound by the Commonwealth Privacy Act. The city's not bound by the Commonwealth Privacy Act. However, we anticipate the state government will be bringing in privacy and data sharing legislation that will apply to local government in the near future.
Mr Morby Esquire, would you like to add anything? No, okay. Councillor?
So, Mr Mayor, sorry, in addition to the changes that are being proposed, how will that affect the current situation? I didn't quite understand.
Mr Blanchard?
You made reference it was going to be applied to local government, in the state government. How does that affect this, what I just asked?
That wouldn't, the only way that might affect the current arrangement is that local governments will be bound by data sharing legislation, and there may be requirements about how local governments share data with corporations and how they share data with us. We don't have a draft of that legislation yet.
You happy with that? Councillor Sandri?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There was a suggestion by councillors before that, you know, we don't value safety. Clearly not.
I don't think there was any suggestion.
There was. There was. It was directed that way. And I'll just clarify, if that was the case, then council actually supported a motion when this came up to upgrade the footpaths, as rightly pointed out by Councillor Kristicevich. So I'm not sure why we would necessarily want to water that down. But notwithstanding, with respect to point 5, the reason why I can't support it tonight is for this very reason. This is about us going out for a tender. We're now changing it for one or more. We might find that there is no one who wants to tender when there's multiple people in the pool. We might find someone will only give us a penny lease, so $1 lease acquisition to operate down at the coast. And this council has not yet determined if those parameters are suitable in order for e-scooters to continue. So why would we be spending time and money right now to, and everyone's suggesting point 5 is around the word consideration. It's not. The word is develop a planned priority footpath program. So it is actually an actioning point. Why are we actioning something when we don't even know if this council will be continuing with e-scooters because it has not yet gone through the tender process? Now, through the tender process, if we find out, yes, as a council, we want to support e-scooters, then absolutely we need to do the work about upgrading certain footpaths within the wards where the e-scooters are a part of, because they do need to be widened and they do need to be upgraded to facilitate co-use. There's no dispute about that. But why would we be using our resources and our executive team's time developing a planned priority footpath program when we don't even know what the tender looks like yet? And which is why my suggestion at committee was, why not put this into a notice of motion that attaches on the back of the tender process, that if a tender is approved, immediately you develop a planned priority footpath. And maybe the councillors may wish to modify that motion to suggest that. But otherwise,
Would
I
you
will not
like
be
to,
supporting it.
councillor?
No, thank you.
Okay. That's right. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Before I start, could I please have a definition of the current agreement as such time a new agreement can be formalised and become operational? Are we talking years?
Sorry, what are you asking?
It says a new agreement can be formalised and become operational. There is no date, there's no time frame, and as local government, I believe that several times we've been told we should actually put time frames on things. There's nothing on that.
I don't think we have a time frame yet. We're currently in a trial. We had an option to extend the current agreement for up to 12 months, I believe. And I would suggest that, one, this progresses either way. We're either deciding whether we're going to stay in scooters and go to the next process of a tender, and during that tender, a new agreement will have the time frame on it.
Mr Mayor, I'm listening to you correctly. You're saying that the original agreement was 12 months, so this assumes that
It's a
this
trial,
agreement
though.
will be 12 months as well.
No. So we're going from a trial, to be very clear, the original motion was to trial e-scooters. The trial has gone through public consultation and we've received the report. This is progressing a public tender process to determine the future of that. And I would think there'd be standard terms that will be worked out by city officers, and I would suggest that for it to be a viable sort of tender, it's going to be longer than 12 months.
Well, it doesn't read that way. It reads a new agreement can be formalised and become operational. It doesn't date it. It doesn't say that a tender will be done, especially when if you look at 5, where you're going out to other tenderers, then number 1, it doesn't make any sense because you would have to change the wording of it to make 5 viable. So that's the way I read it. With regard to page 124, the 12-month trial, which did expire in December, and we're now looking at March, and so my question still is dates. We had a trial area. The trial area did not include south of Scarborough Beach Road, and yet there are lots of e-scooters that have come right down to Jakarta. Now, when I raised this originally, they said, oh, well, they'll just throw them and that. They can't throw them that far. Well, they could have, I suppose, if they're strong enough, but there's no way they would have got there if it wasn't for the area being bigger. This council had a trial area. Why is that trial area not in accordance with what was originally approved by this council?
Council during the process made changes to that trial area. I would suggest, so if you're finding scooters somewhere down in Woodlands and you're talking about 1 or 2 scooters, someone's probably put them in a ute and ended up down there. Unless the trial area has been extended. I haven't got the app in front of me, but you can check it easily on your app and see where the trial area is. We might even get Mr Guillemot to provide comment. I'm pretty sure that it's not included down into Woodlands. I'm sure there'd be a lot of people who'd be happy if it did, as the community feedback said, but...
Through you, Mr Mayor, the trial area hasn't extended. The only conceivable reason other than that given by the Mayor is there was a special day at Jakarta Lake where we allowed literally a one-day event where with our Rec and Leisure team to have an event there where people could go around with scooters, and we delivered a very limited number of scooters for people to use on that one particular day. But other than that, I can say categorically the extent of the trial area has not changed from day one.
Councillor?
Well, I'm not blind, but I have seen them on their orange scooters on Pearson Street and then coming back to Jacketta more than one day on Monday. So that was outside your area, but
We'll check with Neuron and get the data for you.
But
it's
but
every
that's-
chance it wasn't an orange scooter from us.
So you're saying I'm blind that it wasn't orange? Because then the orange scooters were left there.
Maybe it's a private orange scooter.
Who would leave an orange, a private?
Anyway, Councillor, let's
I'm
get
not
on with the
debating
item.
you.
I don't think it matters if
Anyway,
someone went into Woodlands.
My comment still stands about them not going as far down. The second comment I'd like to make is when the financial implications are footpaths, the call centre, the administration and reports. It's not going to cost the council nothing. So I think we need to keep that in mind. And also, if they're contractors, sometimes, depending on how the contractors in the tender documents are written, if it ever gets to a tender, I don't know, because it doesn't say, that whether or not we're actually liable for any injuries caused by a footpath not being to a standard of which the scooters can go on.
Whether
If that causes-
I can answer that, and the city is insured, and the city. It doesn't matter whether someone jumps on a paid scooter or jumps on their bike. We have an obligation to make sure our footpaths are accessible and safe. I don't think that changes because someone's paying to use a scooter.
So, Mr Mayor, that's the same with a verge, that a tree branch falls on a car on a verge, but we don't pay for that.
No, it's not the same as that.
Well,
The city
might
has
read it the
insurers as
same.
well.
And they don't pay when cars are destroyed by trees, street trees. Anyway, different story, that'll come back again. With regard to the areas, 80% of the people that were surveyed said that they would like to have the scooters. But that was because they're actually people who use the scooters.
Not all of them were.
Well, majority of the people said, have you used a scooter in this trial? 70% said, so my apologies, 10% I was out.
So
I'm
if
sorry.
if it would help you, and you'll keep looking at the stats there, you'll also read that 100,000 people have signed up to use the scooters.
Yes,
So it's still a significant pool if that's what you're alluding to.
that's not what I'm alluding to,
Okay.
if I could continue.
Well, I'm trying to get there.
Thank you. Majority of the people that actually answered the consultation, of which we didn't really have any control over, I suppose, was that they actually used the scooters to start with. So people that are using them would definitely say yes. You didn't ask the people in the Gophers, the prams, the people that are trying to negotiate the footpaths, or anything else.
That's incorrect. We did.
You asked
We
the
and we
Gopher
did have
people.
control over the consultation. It was our consultation.
Well, then we did have control, so therefore we would have gone out to the seniors, the Gophers and everybody else? I don't think so. So, they're the people that are concerned, and that
15
also
seconds.
makes me concerned. Well, I should have extra time because it's taken you longer to answer my questions. And that is
You now have
unfair.
10 seconds.
Yes, that's all about me, I know. If you look at page
8.
135, it says under the double view, Carrinup is 13. Carrinup isn't in the double view ward, sorry about that. Innaloo is 11.
Point of
Woodrows is 6.
clarification, there's at least 20 homes in Carrinup that are in double
sorry.
view ward.
Councillor Reid, let's stick with the item on the agenda.
13 out of the 20
Wind
wanted
it up now,
I
please,
find
councillor.
that interesting. I cannot support this, and I take it on board that the coastal councillors think it's great, and it's great for that area, but to the others, it's not, and the trial is not there, and there's so many other issues that they're not following that I just can't support it. And I am concerned about having an agreement that doesn't have a date and that we don't say anywhere in this documentation on this motion about having a tender.
Thank you, councillor. Deputy Mayor Proud.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I won't be supporting this as it is. I would be supporting the foreshadowed. However, if this were to get through, I would like them all individual, please. Up to you, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put them all individual if that's what councillor wants.
Thank you. I'm just going to throw a hypothetical in here to start with. If the tender went out to operators to operate in unison with one or more multiple operators, would it not be feasible or obvious or common sense? They would need to talk to other operators to see how they would work together. Otherwise, they would be running blind. Either they're doing it solo and they know what they're doing, or they'll be dealing with 2 or 3 others. Now, they won't know who the others who are tendering unless, you know, they talk together. I don't know. But we would be, I think, obliged to let them know, because how are they going to get the information? How are we going to put a tender in to say that they can work with, let's say it's Beam, right? And we could operate with Beam because we know how they operate and we've spoken, and they could do whatever and we could do whatever else. Working with multiple operators, I don't think that's smart. Certainly go out to tender and get as many tender operators as you can, but as sole operators. Further, we had an officer...
So can I just clarify? We do that with tenders all the time.
Yes.
Where we go out and either have a panel, and it's described within the tender. So the tender process would be prescriptive, and it may even ask them, if you were the sole tender, what would you do? If you had to share the tender, what would you do? But they don't work with the other scooter companies. This happens around the country now, where there's multiple operators.
Okay, so on that, Mr. Giamov gave us, there was a question, I think it was in response to Councillor Migdale, as in the pros and the cons of having more than one operator or a sole operator. Pretty much it was all cons.
No, that's not correct, Councillor. There was pros and cons.
Yes.
And it's up to council tonight whether they want to, which way they assess it. So it's entirely your decision if you...
Agreed. I'm just trying to point this out. I saw many more cons than pros in the officer's advice, and we got advice today from the operator we're currently using, which was 4 or 5 pages. It made reasonable sense. Obviously, they would like to continue. They've got experience. However, they put forward some very good reasons why you wouldn't, and a lot of those related to safety. If we were looking at this, I think if we were looking at more than multiple operators, councillors should have a workshop on that to tease it out. It was brought up at committee on Tuesday, and there was really good discussion last Tuesday. However, it wasn't, weren't discussing that as if it was a realistic view, what we were thinking of. It was just bartered around. Item 5, totally separate. That would happen regardless, and as Councillor Sandry mentioned, put it through separately, but obviously if a tender went through, we would make it safe. I would dare say there would be a little bit higher concentration on doing those areas where the e-scooters travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a couple of questions actually, because I have actually spoken to both the planning director and also the director of infrastructure. Thank you. But I noticed what Councillor Sandry said. We should stop now. If we are we going to stop the process of a tender? So my thing is, I thought it was a pilot program. After the pilot program, I made a presumption that we'd get a lot of statistical data to show frequency of use, hours where the use happened most on certain main frequent roads or whatever. Did the scooters use roads or did they use footpaths? What were that based on? I also would have liked to know, did they use the Moreland Street, Manning Street road as a cycle route? They use the thing, because I never see any scooters. Because could I have a answer on that one?
Sure.
Do we have that data?
Yeah, so Mr Murphy or through you to Mr Guillemot, whoever decides to answer, the question is a reasonable one. It's basically saying, apart from the statistics that they publish in terms of usability, have they collected data in terms of tourism precincts, like up and down the coast, as opposed to Moreland Street, Bicycle Boulevard, or those east-west connections? And have we been provided with that data? And if not, why not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that data can be obtained. We haven't received it yet, only because we haven't asked for it yet, only because we weren't sure of the future, but of e-scooters beyond the trial. So what the current operator can provide us in terms of data, and I apologise that I've only sort of thought of it at the moment, so I can't distribute it, but when we distributed the last update of the strategy of their sort of late night strategy, they gave us a sort of heat map showing, you know, the areas that are more frequently used. So that's the type of data that we would use. The heat map is not like, it doesn't contain any personal data, so we don't have to worry about that perspective, but it does give us an idea of which areas are more commonly used. And obviously this diagram that I've shown is quite grainy, but we can obviously narrow down and focus in on areas so we can identify whether the Moreland Street Bike Boulevard, or whether Scarborough Beach Road, or whether Brighton Road, or whether whatever road comes up is more frequently used, and that way we can allocate resources accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Juma. You've got that map in front of you. Would you be able to sort of just do a quick précis of what you're looking at? Because it's a long distance from here, but you can, I mean, there seems to be a lot of white in areas and nothing in others. That is based on from what?
I don't think we're going to get much of an interpretation
Well, I just
of what
thought
I
it'd
can
give
see
us a
from
bit of
here.
an indication. And what was the time period?
Mr. Guillemot?
So the map, if you know the concept of heat maps, basically it's a map of the trial area, and it'll, where there's heavy use, it's shown in green, and it's clustered, and you can see by areas that are very heavily used, it then goes into different colours, like along the Scarborough Beach, or within the Scarborough Beach precinct, and all along this the coastal shared path. That's shown as red. I can hand it to you if you'd like, if that will make it easy.
Just your microphone, and to me, Councillor. Councillor, your microphone.
The annual report from Euron, and it certainly shows that there's roads which were pointed out before, like Scarborough Beach Road, Brighton Road, and to be honest, I'm looking through Manning Street, Bike Boulevard, and that doesn't have any shadowing at all. And I really think this is where, you know, and I am a councillor in the area, I also live in the area, and I've made that very clear. However, that subjectivity that I've placed on it is certainly is backed up by that data I'm looking at. I'll leave that because my concern is that we also have a motion on the books that in December 21, when Council approved a 12-month e-ridables, it was that the footpaths in the pilot program area for e-ridables should be upgraded to accommodate the safe movement of e-ridables and pedestrians prior to instigating the program. Now, we've just seen that you've got hire scooters, not personal scooters, hire e-ridables. So you've got people going on them without the experience. But what is the liability of the city to address this issue of this motion, that we have already voted on the safe movement of e-ridable drivers and pedestrians in regard to safety? And what is the potential? This actually sounds like it's a binding responsibility in some ways. I'd like to ask Mr. Blanchard or someone with legal expertise to answer that, please.
We might not even need legal expertise for that one. I can tell you, I think even in the report, Councillor Farrell, it did talk about the city officers are comfortable that the footpath network through that area is safe and adequate. And that's the limit of our liability, is to ensure that footpaths are safe and adequate, I would think. I would think that it's not going to take a rideable scooter that's hired for us to make that happen. I took your intent in this motion, number 5, that we look at those very high usage areas and upgrade them to the new standards of 1.8 make sure they're, Mickey Mouse, because we know that there's going to be a lot more usage. Not that the areas less travelled are going to have a new footpath because the other one wasn't safe.
If I was unclear, I'm really talking about the high usage, and let's be clear, we're not talking about doing every single footpath. I think it's very clear in that motion that Mr Christovich read. It is looking at those that the officers will determine based on the data that Neuron would provide. And that's what I can't see the concern, because we're not saying, we're waiting for data. We're at the advice of the officers. The fact that the officers were quite supportive of this motion to both myself and my co-councillor, indicated to me that there is a understanding that once you get these as a commonplace item on the footpaths, with hilly areas particularly, you actually do have to address what is there in situ. And it's exactly what you said, making sure that we've got the right width. Do we need wider widths? I don't know. I will can I just make an anecdotal comment in regard to this?
You can say what you like.
The people, the guys that own their scooters, I was out there at Mettham's Beach where we're looking at putting the officers are looking at finally putting another access for, people with infirmed down to the Mettham's Beach water. And as we're looking, I was talking to a resident, and he said, talking about he knows motorcycles or something, because he said they are doing 40 to 50 k's per hour. They've hot rodded their personal scooters as two scooters went by at 7:45 in the morning at a very busy part of the path there. Now that's a wide path. It's got a delineation of a line through it where you go one side or the other side.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is even in that sort of one side or the other side, clear delineation, much wider than 1.8, it was a real concern about the safety of the pedestrians who were more older than I am, and they were going to their morning swim, or they had dogs. And that is a problem where, we need to ensure that we cover ourselves, I think, as much as possible. And I leave it to the officers to do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perkoff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, just to mention something about Woodlands and Jakarta Lake. The geofencing area is blocks and blocks away from there. You might have been right that in fact somebody put these things in the ute. They're nowhere near the lake itself. Secondly, I think we've reached an impasse. I'm starting to get a migraine. In the corporate world, this is where the general manager or someone will say, go away, sort it out, and don't come back until you sort it out. I think for our own sanity and everyone's sanity, I think I'd like to move a motion that we hold this over to a workshop, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And if I got a second for that motion, seconded Councillor Olo, that is a procedural. Let's hold it over to a workshop. Just in terms of timing to the next available time slot.
I need a bit of help here. Yes, I'm not sure. What's a good time? Workshop. Just a workshop. Find a day somewhere where we're all.
March 2026.
Yeah.
We have a date, Mr Mayor.
Let's to be held over to a workshop in April.
Don't forget word at Easter coming up, Mr Mayor.
They'll come back early from holidays. In April, May. Let's do April/May. Give ourselves some time.
We haven't done a Saturday one in ages.
The intent is to do it sooner rather than later, to move on. Makes perfect sense. It is a procedural, so I will put that motion to hold it over. Thank you. Councillor, that motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Just for clarity, look, I think that's a sensible way to go. There's a lot of stuff to be sorted out. And there is no hurry. To be clear, the scooters will just continue like normal. The trial can continue on, my understanding, Mr Murphy. And we'll do the workshop, sort it out, come back. I do think during that putting of the motion, Councillor Perkoff declared himself the general manager, but We'll now go to item 12.2 CC1, public art on private land. Councillor Hatton as chair of the committee.
Yes, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the public art? Thank you. Councillor Perkoff. Councillor Reid, did you have a question or do you opposed? You pulled out the public art on private land.
Oh, my apologies. I did raise quite a few questions at committee regarding the appointment of the public art professionals, etc., and how often they would be used. I'm just still concerned about whether we really need them, and I know that...
So what I'm asking is...
Can I have verification that do we actually have to have them, please?
All right, so Mr Quirk. Ms O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In response to that question, the local planning policy was adopted in December last year, and off the back of that, a term of reference was developed to outline how the panel would work and convene to assess the developer's contribution in terms of public art and construction. As part of that, officers are experienced in arts and development here at the city, but they are not qualified in terms of large development scale and project management in both artistic value or in also construction value to be able to do that completely independently. So by having the professional panel appointed, that enables a relevant expert to provide the right level of expertise and advice back to the developer who is applying for the public art.
Does that answer your question?
Sort of. So based on that then...
Sorry, can you just put your microphone up?
Sorry. Wouldn't we be looking at people with a project management background rather than people that are on the same committees with the other councils? Because otherwise it's like the design review panel and we get the same concrete build everywhere.
There's only one person who sits on the panel. There's several people who sit on this panel, but only one used at each time.
Yes.
And they're there for their public art experience.
Yeah, but looking at the choice by the staff that, without going into anything else, those people are on some similar other committees at council. So we've got...
And that was answered at committee. That's exactly the reason they're on there, is because they're extensive experience in that process and understanding the art.
Well, I think it goes the other way. I think we should go project management people who aren't on them, because otherwise everything's the same. It's just concrete boxes.
Thank you. So there's no one opposed to this. So I will put that, move Councillor Hatton, second to Councillor Perkoff. And we've just got a couple to go. We've got Councillor Lagan and Councillor Farrelly. Thank you. And that is unanimous, noting that Councillor Migdal is not in the chamber at the moment. We'll go to item 12.2 F1, been pulled out by Councillor Reid. Councillor Hatton.
Yeah, I'd like to move the committee recommendation. Thank you.
I have a seconder for the schedule of accounts. Councillor Ferrante. Councillor Reid, you just have a question?
My first question, as I alluded to before, was with regard to the white paper, on page 11, which is, there's lots of ones, so it's hard to figure out what page it is. But on the actual agenda, it's 222. So if you'd like to go to 222, 223, my apologies. It's got the expenditure on agency staff. I don't believe that the comments made by the director on the white page should be confidential, and I ask the presiding member that...
Mr Richards, could you provide some comment on that?
Certainly, through the chair. Just in terms of context for the agency staffing, we tend to use staffing to backfill vacant positions where there's high turnover or there's lots of vacancies. So Parks is a good example. We've currently got 10 vacant positions after accounting for all the agency staff that we have in that area. We use them to backfill for recruitment processes because it will take generally 2 months to recruit a position, and where we can't get a casual pool. In terms of whether this information is confidential or not,
So just for clarity, this is talking about the white paper with the amount spent on agency staff. I don't think that's confidential, and it's not part of the agenda, so it's not part of a confidential agenda. This was part of a memo that had extra information. It's got confidential on it, on the whole memo? Yeah, let's clarify, Mr. Blanchard.
Thank
Depends
you,
what else
Mr.
is on
Mayor. The CEO or any person authorised by the CEO may mark a paper confidential, and by doing so, that restricts the ability of any officer or elected member to release that information to the public. Council, as a whole, may resolve to make a certain aspect of what would otherwise be confidential public. There are parts of that memo which we would consider would remain confidential relating to tenders, but if council wishes to resolve to make the first page of that memo that it is currently confidential, not confidential, it's open to council to do so.
On the 223, it actually states year to date, for example, 373,493 on parks and sustainability. That actually has a defined amount for the ratepayer. It is up to the council to decide. On the white paper, it takes it down, breaks it down a bit further, which I'm a little bit concerned about, because if we have the reduction in staff that was suggested, then it would be less. And if we're paying...
So, Councillor, can I just shortcut this and suggest that...
I did ask the question, that's why it's in the white paper.
Well, I understand that,
I don't
but
get to discuss it.
this stuff is really helpful if it's done offline prior to the meeting. Could have easily got the memo and asked the manager, and we could have gone through what parts of it. But I would suggest it's still more appropriate probably to take this offline, and we're happy to then have a look through it and work out which parts can be made not public.
Mr Mayor, I think it comes back to a question that I raised before, which the Director of Finance actually said, that the reduction in staff, therefore there would be reduction in fees, which I said, could we not get a report on, which you agreed at the time. Still waiting for some of those maths to come out. So when I asked it again the other day, some of the maths are out here. But as it is a budget item, one would argue that, well, one would consider that as councillors around the table, we should be talking more about the difference here. And yes, I agree that we can't be involved in the EBA, but we, and Councillor Lagan will talk on that because he likes the EBA. So I won't get involved in that one. But I do believe that if there's a reduction in staff, there should have been a huge reduction in the budget, which everybody can see because it's on the agenda. But my concern is that it's not reduced sufficiently to make sense, and that bit is not being shown to the public. So, and I've already asked for that, got the information. Does it really make sense?
I understand what you're trying to ask. I think it's been asked and answered several times before, though, Councillor, and there's been significant reasons for that. But I don't think that forms part of the schedule of accounts for the period ending 31st of January. And I think that's my point, is we're taking items out and then discussing something completely separate regarding staffing movements. And in this context, we're dealing with a confidential item, but I think this could easily be taken offline. I'm happy to organise Mr. Riches to sit down with you and go through all of that, and then we can work out what you can have. If you want to put it on your Facebook and it can go public, you can put it on. But I don't think there's any secrets.
That's my point, and I have actually spoken to the Director about it. That's why we have the table on page 223, because she said, yes, I'll break it down. Yes, it should be in the public sphere. Yes, it's part of the budget. Yes, we're using a lot of agency staff. We're using nearly $1 million worth of agency staff. But when we equate that back to our budget, which I thought was, which in the budget papers, 110 million, we're equating that back to 1 million staff of agency staff, but we've had all these staff leave. So therefore, we should have more than a reduction as illustrated if you do the basic maths. So it doesn't make sense.
But that's why I think this is a lot more complicated, and I really think we're getting off topic here. But staff movements, one, there is an extreme amount of transparency in the finances of this organisation. You're making several assumptions there that agency staff are the only way we backfill positions, not the fact that those positions also get replaced and that the budget accounts for some of those staff not being in those.
I'm not assuming anything. I'm asking the question, if we having
So
less staff...
let's take this
then the
offline,
agency-
councillor. I'm happy that this can be taken offline, and Mr Richards will sit down and spend as long as you want going through those answers.
I did spend the time with Mrs Hawkins about it.
Mr Richards is going to give it a go now. So there is no one opposed, so I will put that item, 12.2 F1. Councillor Migdale is back in the chamber, and that is Lagan unanimous. I will now ask Councillor Hatton, with the exception of 12.2 T1, I believe we have to take that out and deal with that separately later on. That you move the balance of those reports.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I gladly move the balance of reports.
And a
Thank you.
seconder for those. The Deputy Mayor has seconded, and I'll put those to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Members of the gallery and those at home, please be advised the remainder of those community and resource recommendations have been adopted by exception resolution, with the exception of 12.2 T1. We shall now go to the direct to council items, starting with 13.1. And the first one of those, 13.1, 2023 Planning Congress, Planning Institute of Australia. Do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Migdale.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. And second, Councillor Hatton. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that to the vote. Thank you. And that is unanimous. We better hold the scooter workshop before the 24th of May. And we'll go 13.2, the Urbanism New Zealand Conference. Councillor Migdale, I believe you have an alternative for this one?
Yes, I do. Governance, have you got it there? Yep. It's on the board.
So this is just adding Councillor Sandri to join in. Well, there's a few groans. Would anyone else like to add themselves in? Anyone? No? Okay. A seconder for this motion. Councillor Lagan has seconded. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that one to the vote. That's our sending our planning A team across. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. You'll have a great time, Mr. Rodich. We'll now go to item 14, and we'll go to 14.1, proposed notice of motion. Councillor Farrelly, your recommendation?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, really no further than to basically, like the scooters, putting dates on things rather than let them go forever. So just that.
I just need to know which.
No later than August 2023, just so there's a...
yeah, just wait a sec. Noting that Councillor Sandri has left the room for item 14.1. Sorry, Councillor, you can continue. So, your motion is this one, by no later than August. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Kristovich has seconded. Is there anyone opposed? I'll put that one to the vote. Thank you, councillors. We're getting close. We've got one more, Councillor Ferrante. Thank you. And that is unanimous. Can we just get Councillor Sandri back in? She might have gone to New Zealand already. She rushed out, straight out the door. We will now go to the moment you've all been waiting for. Item 14.2. Councillor Dudek. Your motion.
Thank you. Would you like me to read it out?
Yes, please.
So, that a report be presented to the council meeting to be held 30th May 2023 to provide information and options on a trial bulk verge collection in the suburbs of Balga, Mirrabooka, Nullamara and Westminster to compare waste collected and customer satisfaction against the blue bin system, and a concierge in-home service to remove white goods and heavy items for the elderly and those who cannot manage.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Criado has seconded. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Ree. Councillor Dudek, you may speak to your motion.
All right, thank you. Yes, as the Mayor said, I'm sure you've all been expecting this, but what this motion will do is allow City of Stirling staff to investigate options to successfully run a one-off bulk household junk verge collection trial in the suburbs of Balga, Mirrabooka, Nullamara and Westminster, present these options to Council on 30th of May, as the motion says, where councillors can then vote on whether to proceed with the trial in these suburbs. In the past, verge collections were an annual event in the City of Stirling, I'm sure you all know, and currently still in the City of Nedlands, where residents could put unwanted items, household junk on their verge to be picked up by the City of Stirling. I campaigned for this as there's been a large amount of old furniture and junk dumped in public spaces throughout the Balga ward in the past year. It's an eyesore and brings the overall aesthetic and value of our neighbourhoods down. I was out door knocking extensively throughout my campaign last year, and a common theme of the feedback I received was frustration with the current skip bin on demand system. As councillors, we should all remember that waste management is one of the core functions of local government, and as such, it's incumbent upon us to listen to the community's feedback on this issue. I believe this report and potential subsequent trial will allow council to better understand our residents' waste issues and investigate some solutions. As such, I request council support but welcome input and discussion on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Councillor Crowdo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this. Motion because in the suburbs that my Councillor Dudek and I represent, there's a high proportion of houses also that are used by people who rent, and also a very high proportion of houses, I don't have the percentages with me, which are public housing, and also a number of seniors that live in these areas, and people who come from migrant and refugee backgrounds who are not aware of how to actually contact the city to use the skip bins. So if we get a report as to how much this is used, as well as the effectiveness of the verge collection in comparison to ordering a skip bin, it will be able to make us make a more informed decision about what is the better way forward for certain suburbs, and it certainly can be trialed across the city to test against socioeconomic, the demographics, age groups, etc., to see which system is more beneficial.
Thank you. Councillor Ree, you're against?
And just if the mover and the seconder are happy with a couple of changes, I'd be quite happy. This has been raised several times, and I'm sure the report will actually address the times that this has come up to council.
So this hasn't been addressed a couple of times?
I've raised it before, and other people have raised it in the past. Maybe life before you.
There may be a life before Mayor Mark Irwin, but I don't recall this being raised before.
Okay, maybe. I'd like, if it's possible, 1 and 2, because really the 1 and 2 are totally different. Whether or not whether it needs to say in the A, and where it's got against the blue bin system and potentially across the city, if that could be included, because I think that needs to be in the report, whether it's across the city or not. And
no,
in the report.
Okay.
Yeah, so that the report does actually make it, is it cost effective, whatever, across the city. And the second one, a concierge in-home service to remove white goods, heavy items for the elderly. It's a bit discriminating to use the word elderly. If we could use the word seniors and perhaps disabled people would be a bit nicer than the elderly. And seniors, by definition, according to WA, it's a little bit nicer term. I think would be nicer than the elderly,
so,
if that's possible.
And
I'm happy with that.
Okay, and I think the intent of the second one is the same. So the first one, I would caution, there's significantly difference to say a trial verge collection across the whole city. That is getting rid of the bin system.
But what
So-
I'm saying is, Mr Mayor, is that the report includes that. So if the report says that
I
it's
think
not
so.
cost effective, that it's fine, but the report as it stands only says one ward, and a lot of people saying, well, what about me? So if the report can negate that, then it's good, saves a lot of conversation.
Yeah, I still don't think it makes sense. I think this is about a trial, what it would cost to do a trial verge collection and potentially then bring it back to compare how it works against the blue system. The information on what it currently costs and how effective it is across the whole city would be included in that report. But to suggest the way you've worded it would mean that we do a report on a trial bulk verge collection across the whole city. I think that's a different thing.
Was to cost the city
Can I do a
in
point
the
of order,
report,
please?
not in
There's,
the
you
trial.
can't really do a point of order because no one said anything bad. If you'd like clarification or
I'd,
something.
I'd like clarification to know that can those changes be made without the mover and seconder actually taking them on board?
No, they haven't been made yet. No. I'm not doing anything, councillor. Governance is putting them in red so we can see what they are, so I can ask you if you'll accept them. I'm just trying to clarify this because I need to know what I'm asking the mover and the seconder for. I don't understand the intent of your first one. I'm happy to test it with them if you'd like.
Well, unless it's, it can be wordsmithed better if you like. It's just the thing is that you're not asking for the trial, that the report to include maybe and report
Data
to
across the
include
city.
the data, where if you like, the report to include potentially
So I think
across
the intent
city.
is there for that to happen anyway. The councillors would expect that information to be in the report.
But not if you don't say it, because
They already have. They've had significant discussions with the officers to get to this stage. So
well,
let's check. Are you
the report to include? That's all.
Well, councillors, on A, are you happy to accept that as an addition?
Not at this stage. Do you want me
Okay,
to
so
answer on B?
that one's not in there. And the second one, you're happy to accept that change?
Happy to accept it and appreciate your feedback.
There we go. We're happy with that terminology? Yep. Okay. Yes?
Yeah. Look, if you're looking at experiment, which is this is sort of going to be.
It's a report,
and-
though.
Yeah. Sorry, through you, but you're looking at 3 suburbs. Are you comparing what has previously been waste collected over the last few years, which are COVID years anyway, against and replace the bin and just go blue bin and just go with put out on the lawn now for this year, which I think is not a really good experiment because COVID would have impacted on what people did over the last 2 years for a start. Secondly, though, if you're doing it against the rest of the city, which is is that right? So you'd say Balga, Mirrabooka, Nollamara, Westminster.
Yeah, councillor, all I can say is I think you're preempting a discussion that can happen when a report comes. This is just asking for a report to bring back all this information that you're talking about.
Because I'm really going to lead into something else. I think there's other areas in the city where we would also like to see that happen, where the verges are still used to throw out areas and where you ring up people to help you get them out of the way. But because I'd like to see it across the city because I think there are need for those areas in which we have short-term accommodation, we have not just people with a language
Sorry,
difficulty.
Mr Mayor, is this debate? Have we entered into?
Yes, we have, and it is debate, and we have entered.
And councillor indicated.
May I continue, Mr Mayor?
There's been a mover and a seconder. We've had someone who is opposed who's done an amendment. We are now at councillor Faraday, and next on my list I have councillor Migdale. The order it was indicated. I have no problem with this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
We seem to be spending a lot of time tonight trying to work out spelling mistakes and who's put a hand up. Let's get on with the agenda items.
No, this isn't actually doing that. This is actually saying, is this going to be a potential direction to relook at the whole city and the blue bin versus putting it out on the verge? Or is this just for suburbs?
Again, I think you're all preempting. This is very clear, and anyone who says that they would have liked to have done this, the reality is, for the last couple of years, no one has.
All right.
Councillor Dudek has put a motion up, and done it. And that's why he's suggested this. I would expect that the officers will bring back information for all council on all the wards, how much the blue bins are costing, the difference between the old system and that system, and then the implications of doing it in this. And at that meeting, if councillors wish to then talk about expanding that, that could be talked about.
May I just one last question?
Yeah.
White goods, sorry,
Councillors.
excuse me. The white good program, you have to wait about 3 months to have your white goods taken at the moment. And
I'm glad you asked that. I did put a request through well over 4 or 5 weeks ago now asking that exact thing and haven't received a response.
And I hate to say it, that I've still got 2 bits of white goods in my backyard. And if I could actually get them on the verge, it'd be a lot easier than waiting for the white goods to be collected. I keep them inside the garage, and I forget that particular morning, or I don't have someone who can get their little thingamajig and lift them out on the verge. It's a real difficult situation.
Councillor Migdale, it's your
lives
turn.
in Osmond Park. I live in Scarborough.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Not sure if you recall, but I did put something similar up a few years back now, that a report comes back to council. If you recall.
Thank you, Councillor Migdale, for clarifying that.
Pleasure. Anyway, there's when Mr Littleton put together a fine report back.
It looks like all the councillors want to jump on your bandwagon, Councillor Dudek.
Okay, I did. I wasn't supported at the time. However, let's not lose faith. There's a couple of points that I want to raise about this. I do wholeheartedly support this trial. This is for a report to come back. So let's be clear. It's for a report only at this stage. The reasons why I support this, as stated by the ward councillors, I support it because I do believe that it will make it easier for people, specifically in this ward, but also beyond, who are potentially challenged by language, challenged by technology, or for whatever reason.
Again, councillors, this is for a report to come back. You're debating the item.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I know that. But I am just stating the obvious that it will make things easier for them. The election results of our newest councillor show that people in the area wholeheartedly support the idea, the concept. I do believe that. I do believe that. The other reason why
He's going to be claiming a mandate for verge collections.
Do you know what? If people are interested, they're interested. And they show their interest with their vote, I would suspect. 2 other reasons why I feel very strongly about this. Number one, the tonnage rate that has gone down, plummeted since the inception of skip bins, right?
Councillor, I'm not happy for you to start to enter debate on something we haven't got the information of.
Okay.
Let's wait till the report comes back and then you can debate.
But these are the reasons why I support a report coming back. So
sure, but you're debating items
Mr.
where this
Mayor,
council has no information about that tonnage in front of them.
Okay, I take that on board. So I'll simply say that from an OC health and safety perspective, one would think that it would be beneficial to residents in suburbia to be removing their junk rather than hoarding it. And lastly, if I may, we are looking in the future to wind up Tamala Park at some point.
Councillor, we're getting so far off track.
And potentially this will move the date forward. Thank you, I support this. I hope you do too.
That's it now.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Sandri.
I move a motion that the motion be put, please.
Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. The motion will be put. Moved. No, come on, councillors. It's silly. This is a report to come back. All right, councillors. This is to vote on the motion being put as a procedural. Show of hands, councillors. That the motion be put. Okay. So that that's all right. So I need hands held up so I can go around the table. We'll take more time to do this. Councillor Reid, Councillor Hatton, Councillor Perkoff, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Sandri, Councillor Migdal, Councillor Olo, Councillor Thornton, Councillor Corrado, Councillor Dudek, Deputy Mayor Proud and myself. And against is lost Councillor Ferrante, Councillor Farrelly and Councillor Kristovich. That motion is now to be put. So I now put the motion. So I will put the motion, move Councillor Dudek and second to Councillor Corrado. Councillor Perkoff and Councillor Hatton to vote. And that motion, Councillor Hatton, please. That motion is carried with Councillor Ferrante voting against it. Thanks, councillors. Notice of motion for consideration at the next meeting. Are there any notice of motions for the next meeting? Councillor Lagan, your motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe the officers have it on the screen. That the Mayor write to the CEO and Board of Vicinity Group, inviting them to meet with the City to discuss the possible improvements or the improvements to Dianella Plaza and the reasons the community in Dianella has consistently sought feedback on whether Dianella Plaza will be redeveloped or improved as it is currently providing a poor urban design outcome.
Thank you. Are there any other indications? If not, I have a couple. If you bear with me, governance don't have them. Yep. Yeah, it did. That's exactly what I'm doing. I will provide these in writing. That the Mayor write to the landowner of the Three Oceans site to urgently request that they engage with the City, WA Police, Department of Community and other key stakeholders to determine a plan of action to address antisocial behaviour, trespassing, temporary activation and overall management of the site. And the reason the Three Oceans site is located on a strategic landholding entering the iconic tourism precinct of Scarborough. Currently is an eyesore with broken fencing, derelict buildings in the corner, rubbish littering the site. It is unsafe for the public with drug deals, fires, destruction of property, now the topic of locals who witness the people occupying and visiting the site. Community expects and has a right to feel safe in their suburb. And I do have another one, sorry, bear with me. And the next one, that the City seek a meeting with the local members of Parliament and WA Police to set out a plan of action for street beggars at traffic lights. And the reason, it is impossible to travel the City of Stirling without feeling unsafe at traffic lights. Over the past 12 months, there's been a constant increase in a coordinated and planned traffic light campaign with people walking up and down traffic islands at lights approaching cars. It needs a coordinated approach to determine how to stop this illegal and unsafe activity. That's me. Thank you. If there's no other noms, I'll go to item 16, which is questions by members of which due notice has been given. None. Item 17, new business of an urgent nature. I've nil. 18, matters behind closed doors. Councillors asked for a mover to go behind closed doors. Councillor Lagan has moved. Councillor Thornton has seconded. A show of hands for us to go behind closed doors, please, councillors. That is unanimous. If we can go behind closed doors. Stream will be turned back on, and we welcome those viewers at home back with us. As we open the doors as well, officers. And both those items that were behind closed doors have been carried. I will now go to item 19, which is closure, and I declare the meeting closed at 9:04 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Good night to the viewers at home.